All right, here we go. Hold my banner. And with each passing day, we get closer and closer to the NBA season, regular season, tipping off. Travis Thomas here, and you know I'm not rolling solo. Not only do I have you riding shoddy with me, but we also have an appearance from the walking, talking, triple-double himself, half man, half amazing. Well, I guess that's Vince Carter, but you know who I'm talking about. Ountae Campbell. How you doing, Tay?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good because this weekend I'm excited to watch not one, but two Celtics preseason games. So
Facts.
That's going to be lit.
Facts, bro. In fact, that's where I want to start. I want to start with the 76ers. So, look, we'll bring Tay back later on. You know he's going to rip apart my opening rant for sure. We also have Tony Massenburg coming up, Tay. Former NBA player, covers the Wizards down in D.C. He'll preview the Wizards with us. So we're doing the Wizards and the Nets today, right, for our preview?
That's correct.
All right, so we'll bring Tay back for all those festivities. But I want to get in to the 76ers matchup with the Celtics here because, listen, there's two ways to look at this. From the C's angle, of course, we're expecting some increased minutes, we'll call it, for Tatum and Brown. We understand all that. But I'm still excited to see the bench guys getting their shine. Peyton Pritchard has been balling out all preseason. Sam Hauser balling out. So the guys on the bench who are getting more minutes, we're going to continue to see that, of course. So I'm looking forward to that. And we all know the truth when it comes to the Celtics. We talk about it all the time here on Hold My Banner. For this preseason run, all we really need to see are these guys to get out of this preseason healthy. That's it. Just get out of it healthy, feeling good, feeling great, being ready and primed to go on this repeat run that we all hope we get to see. But from the 76ers side of things, we have yet to see Joel Embiid. We have yet to see Paul George in the preseason. Now, we understand the long game for the 76ers, right? Embiid, Paul George, you just got to be healthy come playoff time. If they are, and that's a big if with those two, but if they are, the Sixers should, and we all anticipate, should be a challenge to the Celtics. But in this preseason game in particular, I'm hoping we get some Joel Embiid. I'm hoping we get some Paul George. Not that it's going to look anything close to or near the finished product, but just to see him out there. I mean, put some respect on the champ's name. You're playing the champs. The least you could do is suit up, go out there, and get a couple minutes. Now, again, regardless whether they play or not, all we need to see is the Celtics get out of this healthy and feeling good about themselves this preseason so we can get to this regular season. Can you tell I'm trying to rush it and get on with it? Enough with the preseason already. But if they're going to do that, if they're going to feel good about everything, if they're going to get out of the preseason healthy, a lot of it is predicated on their leader, Joe Mazzulla. Which brings me to this. I got to be honest, and I've said this before on this show. Joe Mazzulla has completely won me over. I was so skeptical at first. I was not a fan. I didn't think he was particularly great at in-game adjustments. I didn't buy all of his rah-rah speeches and his high-energy stuff. I thought, to be fair, I thought it was sort of corny. I thought it was fake. I thought he was trying too hard. Last season, he completely won me over. Now, it was regular season games where I saw much improved in-game adjustments. I saw some tinkering to some lineups, coming off the bench, changing up rotations. I said, oh, okay, Joe's coaching them up this season. It's not his fault that you got in the playoffs and they beat the hell out of everyone. You didn't really need to see a ton of that from him in the playoffs. But even in that, I have to give him credit. That means the rah-rah stuff does work. That means the rah-rah stuff is authentic to who Joe Mazzulla is. We see that now. We see he's crazy. The players love Crazy Joe. And they often say, it's just Joe being Joe. He is crazy. The rah-rah stuff is real. It's not just some fake thing to hype his team up. No. He actually buys into this stuff. He believes in this. It's an ethos of Joe Mazzulla. So he completely won me over last season. And it should be noted, too, this is the name of the game. Just like we want the players to improve year to year and eventually get to their peak. I mean, it's the same for coaches. He's a young coach. So we should see an improvement year to year from him as well. And then by the time this band is broken up, because we know it's not just the NBA, it's sports. Eventually, dynasties fall. We watched one here for 20 years, but it fell, right? Eventually, it's going to be over. At that point, Joe Mazzulla, you would think, will be at his peak as a coach. And whatever that breakup looks like, it won't sting quite as bad if you got the right guy as a head coach. And certainly Joe Mazzulla is that guy. So you made me a believer, Coach. Now I love your in-game adjustments. Now I love the rah-rah stuff. So let's see if you can lead this team to a repeat championship. Now there's other preseason questions I have about other coaches who are in, we'll call it, pressure situations. Joe Mazzulla, sure, you're trying to repeat as a champ. There's some pressure in that. I understand that. But really, if you don't and you fall short, you can always fall back on that ring, right? Well, there's some other coaches around this league that don't have that luxury, and I have my eye on them even in the preseason to kind of see how they're going to deal with that sort of microscope on them. The first one, let's start out west. And you know where I'm going here. It's J.J. Redick. I mean, I have respect that this guy went from playing the game to doing what I'm doing as a talking head, and now he's coaching the bleeping Lakers. I mean, that's insane. That is a come-up of all come-ups. But I'm just going to be flat out. I don't know how you feel about it. How I feel, this is going to be a disaster, and I can't wait to watch it play out. By the way, if I'm wrong, I'm still going to watch it play out, and I'll give all the props to J.J. Redick at that point. But I think it's going to be a disaster simply because, yes, you don't have experience. Cool, we got it as a coach at all, let alone a head coach of an NBA team. But two, have you seen LeBron James complaining about flying to Milwaukee for a preseason game? What, bro? You're complaining about flying to Milwaukee for a preseason game? You don't think LeBron's going to run another coach out of there? You don't think he's going to wear him out? I do. So I want to see that happen. Here's the other one. Doc Rivers in Milwaukee. Now, again, much like we were talking about earlier with the 76ers, sort of playing that long game with Embiid and Paul George's health, the Bucks are in the same boat, right? You're not going to ask really anything from Giannis and Dame in the preseason. I get it. It's long game. But Doc Rivers still needs to figure out the rotation, still needs to figure out, other than Dame and Giannis, let's assume health for both, 100%. You still need another something. You need somebody who can step up and get you a bucket or get you a stop when you need it. I personally think Chris Middleton is cooked. So Doc has to figure out who in the hell else can help me when it really counts, when we get to the postseason. If I got my two horses healthy, who's the third horse I can bring in here and help me out? He has all season to sort of figure that out. So I have my eye on that in the preseason. Who's sort of flashing? Who's popping? Who looks like they can ball for the Bucks? And then Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland is another one. You know, look, I think Cleveland is an extremely talented team. I do. I think the Cavs have underachieved with that roster that they have. And some of it has been injuries. I think that's fair, particularly Donovan Mitchell, who always seems to get hurt when you need him the most. But from a coaching standpoint, and what I want to see in the preseason, Kenny Atkinson walks into a team that is talented, has expectations to level up, to go to the next level, right? And I'm not in Cleveland. I'm in Boston covering the Celtics. But from the outside looking in, it feels like Cleveland is a little toxic. So now you have a coach coming in with a talented team who's underachieving, right? It could be a toxic environment with Donovan Mitchell. Remember, he wanted out, then he kind of backpedaled, and they ran the coach out instead. That's toxic, okay? And now you couple that with the expectations on this team. That's a lot of pressure for a coach to turn it around. So I want to see Kenny Atkinson and sort of how he is adjusting to that early on here in the preseason. And then the last one is Ime Udoka, our old friend. I love what he's done in Houston. It has been fantastic. He has rebuilt that team on the fly, quick, fast, and in a hurry. And these teams tear their teams down to the studs and say, well, it's going to take 4 or 5 years. My arse. I mean, Houston was a mess. They hire Ime, boom, overnight they're relevant. He is maximizing that young talent that Houston has. I still think they're a ways off from being true championship contenders, but I do believe this is the time for them to level up as well. I think Houston is going to be a mainstay in the Western Conference playoff picture for years to come. I think it starts this year. I think they get a much more comfortable. They were fighting for the play-in game positioning last year, but this year I'm looking at a 7 or 8 seed for the Rockets. I want to see them take that step. So I want to see how Ime is sort of navigating that in the preseason to see if they're going to live up to the expectations at least I'm putting on them this season. All right, let's bring him in. Ountae Campbell here, who I always can see, just so you know, I'm going to bring you all behind the curtain. I can see Ountae from where I'm sitting, and usually during my opening rants, he'll take a note or two. Today, he is writing like he's studying for the SATs. So I know you're about to pick this apart before we get into our other, teams, previews, Wizards, and Nets today.
Yeah, here's my thing. I'm going to start out with Celtics 76ers preview. I got to start there, and then I'll work my way down.
All right.
I don't think we're going to see Paul George and Embiid, and I don't have any issues with what you said about these two teams and matching up and respecting the Celtics, and I think they do. I think they are definitely worried about the Celtics because everybody in the league is, because they're the champions.
Yeah.
My thing is they also play a back-to-back. We talked about the Celtics playing a back-to-back.
That's right.
Saturday, Sunday. They play a back-to-back. Minnesota at home on Friday in Philadelphia, and then they come here to Boston afterwards. So I think they're probably going to see Minnesota and have those stars out for Minnesota, and then probably tailor it back, especially after having to get on the plane. I know it's not a far plane ride. You already talked about NBA players, Mr. LeBron James and JJ Redick complaining about plane rides, a far plane ride. But, after a plane ride, I just don't think they're going to want to play those guys, so they'll probably sit out. The thing that I did want to know about that, too, is in that game that they played, because they've already played one game so far against the New Zealand.
It was like
Breakers.
New Zealand All-Stars or something. Like, get out of here.
Okay, stop.
They got smoked.
Hold on. Don't get disrespectful, because I got to shout out one of my boys, a kid that I grew up with back in Los Angeles, Parker Jackson Cartwright, who's the point guard for the New England Breakers. He had a fantastic 2 games, not even just one, because they also played the Utah Jazz a couple of days before that, before they went to Philadelphia and played the 76ers. He had an incredible 2 games. So shout out my boy for dogging out these NBA teams. All right. I love that. All right. Now I need to talk about those coaches that you were talking about under pressure.
Sure.
I don't have any issues with any of the coaches that you said. Maybe a little bit with Kenny Atkinson. I understand the toxicity that you were saying was going on in Cleveland. Whatever. Cleveland fans, have at Travis for that. Don't bother me. I want to talk about the 2 other guys that I think you forgot to mention. Okay. And I was looking more Western with these. Okay. Willie Green with the Pelicans. Yeah. It's been since 2021 since he's joined the team. And I understand that team's not had expectations because Zion's been hurt. Yeah. B.I.'s been hurt. Yep. Whatever. Now they have expectations. It's time for them to win. It's time to see if he can be the leader of these young men who are now not so young anymore. You know what I mean? This team, we used to look at them as a young team. I wouldn't say they're a young team anymore. Willie Green has been there for now going on his 3rd or 4th season. 4th season, excuse me. It's time for him to step up, and he's definitely getting that seat a little bit warm, almost like those leather seats in your nice car, Travis. And then, other than that, Mike Brown with the Kings. Yep. Now, we've seen it before. A Coach of the Year guy who was the Coach of the Year the first year he was with the Kings. Coach of the Years have been fired before. We saw it with Dwayne Casey. The Detroit Pistons, after he won the Coach of the Year, was like, hey, see ya, peace, thanks. I think it's going to be the same thing here with Mike Brown. If he doesn't get a winning season out of this Kings team with bigger expectations, George talked about how he liked them. I know me and you have talked about it off air, how much you like this Kings team. With DeMar DeRozan now being added. Shout out to Domantas Sabonis being on starting five, getting the inside view of what his life looks like. People are invested in this Kings team. De'Aaron Fox obviously is the head of that snake. If he can't lead this team to being a good team like he was in 22-23 season, it's over for Mike Brown.
Yes. I agree. No more excuses, not just for that team, but particularly for De'Aaron Fox. Now, Tay, you know this. Many of you don't. Before I came here to Boston, I was in Washington, D.C., covering the Washington Wizards. So first, I'd like to say thank you, Boston, for saving me and bringing me here to a champion so I didn't have to cover the mess that is the Wizards. So we'll start with our Wizards preview, then we'll do the Nets, Tay. But to help me out, I went with an old friend who used to play for the Celtics and damn near every team in the league, Tony Massenburg. So let's get into the Wizards preview with him. All right, Ountae, now this is my main man, Pretty Tony, what they call him. Now, Tony, I ain't seen you since I left D.C. Of course, we talk all the time, check in on each other. You've popped in on my radio show, which you know I always appreciate. But look, man, catch me up because, you know, I left the Wizards, came up here, and covered a champion. Slight flex right there. I had to do it, Tone. I had to do it, but
I hear you flexing. I see you.
I had to do it, but at the same time, you know, when I left there, Bradley Beal was literally running the team. He was running the franchise. They was doing whatever they wanted to do to try and make him happy. He gets traded to Phoenix. We know the end of that story. Catch me up because I mean, I look up, and this is the worst team in the league. I know the Pistons had it, but I feel like the Wizards, in my opinion, were the worst team in the league. What the hell happened, Tony, since I've been gone? Then we'll get into this season.
I'm sorry I lost you there, Travis. I lost you. I lost everything after you said, this is the worst team. I lost everything after that. You cut out, man.
That was it. Catch me up on how they became the worst. Because when I was there, Bill was running the show. He gets traded. They become the worst. What the hell did I miss, Tone?
Well, what happened was once they decided that, okay, we're not going to be very good, and we owe Bradley Beal a ton of money for what he's done and the player that he is, but we're not going to win. So the owner, Ted Leonsis, decided that, it's time for a rebuild. They traded Brad. Brad was at a point after, being a solid NBA veteran, all-star, the whole nine, all the accolades that go with being a great player in the league. He decided that he wanted to be in a better situation that would give him a chance to win and compete for a championship. So he ultimately, the two sides came together. Brad had a destination in mind that he wanted to be traded to, and that just happened to be Phoenix. So he wanted an opportunity to play with KD and Devin Booker. And obviously for the team, being in a luxury tax situation, a very high luxury tax situation, Ted Leonsis made a business move to reduce the salary cap because clearly you're not going to the playoffs and you don't look like you're going to be winning games on a high level anytime soon. And so the trade was made to send Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns for some draft picks and future acquisitions. And so now what we have now is a team that drafted 3 players in the first round this year. 3 young players, none of which are more than 20 years old. They got the 2nd pick in the draft. They got the 14th pick in the draft, and they got the 24th pick in the draft. The 2nd pick in the draft is Alex Sarr, who is out of France, 7-footer, a lot of potential, versatility, particularly on the defensive end, has recently shown the ability to also shoot the 3 ball. One of these new age post players, guys that are 7 feet that can stretch the floor. So clearly they're expecting great things from him in the future. The 14th pick is a guy named Bud Carrington from Baltimore, who is a 6'5" combo guard who can basically do it all. Great defender, great scorer, that what I call Baltimore tough kind of edge to him, plays with a lot of grit on both ends of the floor, very versatile, is really good at both positions. I wouldn't call him an off guard, and I wouldn't call him a point guard. I'd call him a combo because that's what he is. He has the ability to play both those positions very well. And then with the 24th pick in the draft, they got Keyshawn George, who is another 19-year-old who played 1 year of college basketball and is coming to this league as a guy who exhibits a lot of versatility as a 6'7" wing player who has point guard skills and also has a pretty good three ball and not super athletic, but very crafty. And so these three guys have a lot of potential, and obviously the Wizards have made a commitment to building for the future.
Hey, I heard enough. A dude named Bub from Baltimore, I know he can ball. I don't even need to know anything about him other than that, Tone. I mean,
there you go.
It's obvious the Wizards are in a rebuild. They've completely committed to the youth movement here. What are your thoughts of the offseason? I mean, clearly they're letting all the young players play and develop, and we'll see what sticks for the future. But how do you sort of grade it? Were you happy with the offseason? Are you happy with this youth movement direction that this franchise is going in?
I am. I'm happy with the youth movement. I thought the 3 draft picks, they used them very well. I think they addressed the needs that the team was looking at when you're talking about the improved shooting. All 3 of these guys can shoot the basketball. To me, Alex Sarr has potential to be a great shot blocker in this league. He's shown that already. He's very athletic as a 7-footer, moves side to side extremely well. As you like to say, slides the puppies, can guard the 4 position. And again, on the offensive end, he's a guy that can stretch the floor and draw bigger centers away from the basket. And he can also put the ball on the floor and drive. So he's shown the ability to be good in fast break situations as a guy that can run the floor, that can also defend provide some rim protection, which is something they sorely needed from last year's team. They ranked at the bottom of the league in rim protection because they didn't have a lot of shot blockers. So he addresses that. When you look at Bud Carrington and Ountae George, these are dynamic wing players. And now with the other acquisitions of veterans, when you look at Valanciunas, who was also acquired by the Wizards, and a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, who unfortunately just had a wrist injury, is going to be out for a significant amount of time. But his presence with these young guys is really going to help them develop a little bit quicker. So I think when you look at the mix of veterans that they brought in, along with the young draft picks that I think will develop into great NBA players in a couple of years, I think the Wizards definitely made the right moves this summer and should be in contention as far as playoffs and being a team that should be good, I would think, in the next 3 years. It may take 3 years to get there.
Yeah, you talked about those young guys, but the guys people really want to hear about, I appreciate that because I want to know, like, what's going on with these young guys. I was already going to ask you about Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington. I love the draft picks. But the people around the world, around the NBA scope, are worried about 2 guys, Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. I got to ask you the tough questions. Can we expect a bounce-back year from Jordan Poole, and do we expect Kyle Kuzma to even be a part of this Washington Wizards team when the season ends?
Well, you never know what's going to happen as far as, when you talk about guys like Kyle Kuzma and being in a situation where obviously he's not winning a lot of games right now and the team is in a full-on rebuild. And so, he could potentially get to where Bradley Beal got to in the way of, okay, I'm a veteran player. You can't play in this league forever, and I want to be in a winning situation and have a chance to contend for a championship. So I don't know if Kuzma's going to ask for a trade down the road, but he hasn't made any mention of that so far. I think when you look at Jordan Poole, I think last year, the end of last season, where Coach Keith essentially took over for Wes Unseld Jr. and really sort of started to play Jordan Poole as a point guard and a guy who was essentially coming in and basically leading the team and from a shot-taking standpoint. I mean, Kuz led the team in points, but Jordan is an integral part of the Wizards offense, and we saw him once being moved to the point guard position with the ball in his hands a little bit more. He's able to create, which is his strong suit. That's what he does offensively. He's not necessarily a catch-and-shoot guy as a Wizard, but he has to be a guy who can initiate the offense and find ways to get other guys involved while at the same time maintaining his scoring prowess. And so we saw him toward the end of last year basically embracing that role of being the guy who has the ball in his hands and is responsible for getting others involved and picking his spots to score because that's something that he does well. So if he can pick up from where he left off last year, being more of a leader, being more of an offensive facilitator, and basically showing that leadership that he was brought here to show as a guy that came out of a championship situation with the Golden State Warriors. And I think he's on track to have a more consistent year this year than he did last year.
All right, so that's Poole and Kuzma, the two big names. I want to go back to the youngsters for a second. From what you've seen so far and you sort of can assess, who will have a bigger impact sooner, Sarr or Carrington? Because it sounds like you really like both. Who do you think will have a bigger impact this season?
Well, I'm going to go with Sarr because I think he'll get more of an opportunity than Carrington will. I think when I look at Sarr right now, he can be effective on the defensive side of the basketball, but these last couple of preseason games, he's really shown the ability on the offensive side to shoot the three and to be pretty good in the mid-range area. He's not a traditional post player. He's going to have to improve his back to the basket game and get a little stronger down there physically, which, you know, at 19 years old, you would expect that from him to come into the league and obviously have to get stronger as most guys do. And so as he continues to improve as a post player, while hopefully adding some more things to his game on the offensive side, he's already shown the ability that he can score in this league with NBA players. And so I think with that, combined with the fact that he also has to be a better rebounder, if there's an area that he really needs to improve on for me, I think it would be rebounding. He has to figure out a way to be a very effective rebounder when you're talking about being 7 feet tall, having a 36-inch vertical, 7'4" wingspan, which is what he has. And so he's got to utilize those physical and tangible.
Go ahead, Tay.
Yeah, that Sarr is definitely going to be a great player for this team. I've seen it early on in summer league. I was a little nervous, but as I've been able to watch him throughout the preseason and summer league on forward, I thought he's been great. I want to know, other than these young guys, other than the stars, what are the key role players to this team being successful?
Well, when you look at the veterans, obviously the Malcolm Brogdon thing is a big loss for me. He's one of the better defenders in this league. He's a guy that's also been consistent offensively. His leadership, I think, is something that the Wizards will sorely miss on the floor. I like the fact that he'll be able to tutor these young guys a little bit, off the court and teach them how to be professionals on and off the court. But when I look at Valanciunas, I think he is a guy, and again, I expect him to start, obviously, because he's a big physical body. He's a presence that the Wizards have sorely missed, particularly against guys like Embiid, who's obviously in the division, and the Wizards have to see them 4 times a year. And Embiid has destroyed the Wizards traditionally every time he plays them because they physically couldn't match up with him. And so with Valanciunas, you got a big body now that can hopefully make Embiid work a little bit. Same thing can be said for Nikola Jokic. But outside of these two guys, you don't really have a lot of super effective big body guys like this. You look around the league at some of the other guys, they're taller, but they're usually slender build. And so I look at these two in particular to really help these young guys. I think when you look at the role players, Corey Kispert is a guy that, the best shooter on the team. I expect him to pick up from where he left off. I really like the improvement that I've seen in Bilal Coulibaly, particularly with the experience he got in playing with the French national team this year with the Olympics. And so, there are other guys. Marvin Bagley had a great year last year, was essentially a walking double-double. He's going to be a guy that's going to be coming in off the bench and hopefully bringing that energy and particularly around the basket and able to score without having plays run for him. So, these guys, I think, along with some of the other veterans on the team, I think will be guys that can really fill the void and hopefully, increase that learning curve for the rookies, because I expect these rookies to play. And and I look at Kyle Kuzma and Jordan to be the guys to really lead this team and provide that leadership and help guide these young players into hopefully becoming great players in this league.
So, Tone, big picture, I mean, you said you think this rebuild's probably 2-3 year project. Are you looking at maybe the same type of season as last season? Do you think they'll be a little bit better, or do you think they're going to fall off a cliff? What do you think this season in terms of where we're at in the rebuild and development for this young team?
Well, Travis, I don't know how much of a cliff you're going to fall off of when you had the second worst record in the league behind the Detroit Pistons. So, how low can you go? I think it's kind of the motto. And I think when you look at this team, I don't expect them to win a whole lot more games than what they won last year, because the team is so young. It's one of the youngest teams in the league. And but they did address, some of the issues. I thought size across the front line and maybe in the backcourt a little bit last year, because you had a smallish, backcourt with Tyus Jones running the point and Jordan alongside him at about 6'4". So that's, Tyus Jones, 6 feet, 6'1" in there. That's a relatively small backcourt in today's NBA. And now all of a sudden, when you look at the Wizards now, they have positional size on the front line. This team has 3, 4, 7-footers on it. And the wing players, average about, 6'6" to 6'9", which that's great size on the wing. And then even in the backcourt, I just talked about Bub Carrington. He's 6'5". You got, as I said, Jordan at 6'4". You got Keontae George at 6'7". So, Keyshawn George at 6'7". So they're guys, they've got positional size now, which I think will help them, particularly on the rebounding side, because when you look at last year's team, the games that they won the battle of the boards usually resulted in a win. And so if they can even address that, as well as, become a little bit better defensively, which I think they did, because they got a couple of defensive-minded people on this roster, and so there'll be an emphasis on that. If they can improve those areas in particular, then that may be good for a couple more wins than what they got last year.
Tone, we do a segment on this show where we judge NBA players' drip, right? And Kyle Kuzma lives in that segment. Like, he might as well have prime real estate in that segment for some of them crazy-ass outfits that he's in. So, Tony, I ask you, it's not even about Kuzma's fashion. I just want to ask you this. When you see these young boys in the NBA dressed the way they dress, what do you think as an OG? You used to come to the games. You played for damn near every team in the league. I know your drip was on point. I'm imagining you wore suits, because back then it was the dress code and all that. I mean, Tone, when you see some of these outfits that these brothers are wearing, please, man, keep it real with me. Tell me what goes through your mind, Tone.
Well, I want to keep it a stack with you right now, but that might come back to bite me. So let me just be politically correct as I can, as a guy from the old school who traditional suits, slacks, pants. We thought of ourselves as businessmen, and so we tried to look the part.
Right.
Now, that being said, this is a different generation. Obviously, social media is huge. Fashion, is getting more exposure now than it did when we played.
Yeah.
And so guys are playing into that. Guys are, we didn't have social media on the level that these guys had it. I think when I was on my way out the league, I think MySpace was like, just getting started, if you can remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And so obviously we've gone on to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and everything else. And so these guys are more they're more into branding themselves, and so with that brand comes the they want to stand out in certain ways, and so that's why I think some of the outfits are so outlandish. There's certainly things that I wouldn't wear that I see guys wearing that I can't do it. I can't do it. So while I try not to knock this today's generation on their choice of dress. I think it's on par with where we are in society. I think there are things when you look across the board, from politics to sports, we are seeing things that just would not fly, 10 or 15 years ago.
Yep.
And so that's just kind of where we are. And that crosses over into fashion. We see guys wearing things that we was like, okay, as Charlie Murphy said, in the Prince skit, on Dave Chappelle, it looks like something a figure skater would wear.
Get him, Toe. Get him, Toe. Get him, Toe.
We just like, guys from the, today's generation, man, it's just, this is where we are.
Yeah.
And guys in my generation, we just kind of like scratch our head like, all right, I guess this is what it is now. And, we're old school. We're going to stick to what we stick to. But me personally, I'm going to just stay in my lane, Travis. You can see me do what I do, and while I like fashion and I try to evolve, with the times, there are just certain places I'm just not going to go.
Well, guess what? You were clean back then and you clean now. We appreciate you, Tony. Thanks for stopping through.
Oh, always a pleasure, brother. Always a pleasure with you.
All right, Tone.
All right, thanks, Tone. I appreciate you always, my man. All right, Ountae. Yep. So Wizards out of the way.
Yep.
From one stinky team to the Nets. Literally, the Nets. The Brooklyn Nets. Look, I don't really have any expectations. I'm not trying. I'm not trying to hate. I know it comes off that way.
Here you go.
And I get all these fan bases. You joked about this earlier in the show. Like the Cavaliers fans are going to come for me now because I took some shots. I said it's toxic there. Look, from where I sit, okay, I try to assess every situation. Right?
Yes.
If I think it's toxic, I'm going to say that. If I think your team stinks, I'm going to say that. If I think your team is a contender, I'm going to say that. The Nets, I believe, are as in good a shape as you can be for a rebuild.
Yeah.
It is a rebuild. Like, I don't feel like a Nets fan should get defensive because I say your team's going to suck because you're in a rebuild.
You should be happy.
I will say this. No, because every fan should be upset that their team's in a rebuild. However, in the Nets case,
yes,
I think they are in as good a shape as you can be in for a rebuild.
Okay.
I almost look at them, even though they won last year, I almost look at them in the same breath as the Thunder before they had success.
Yes.
The Thunder had a ton of young, talented players. You weren't sure how it was going to mesh. They just kept adding to it. Draft picks. You bring in Chet. And so I look at the Nets in the same way. I like some of the young players on this team. I think they're young stars in the making. Yes. Cam Thomas is a star in the making.
Yep.
Cam Johnson is a star in the making. Nick Claxton, I like. I'm not going to go as far as to say he's a star, but hey, they got him wrapped up money-wise. Yeah. I like his game. You could argue. You could convince me. You could talk me into young star in the making moniker for him as well.
Yep.
That's a great young nucleus. You have draft picks out the yin-yang.
Yep.
I think best case scenario, this is not what I think is going to happen, but more on that in a minute. Best case scenario, looking at the glass half full, Ountae.
Yes.
If Ben Simmons gives you anything, good for you, team-wise. B, you can move his ass at the trade deadline and get something. You can get something. Because that contract, when that comes off the books, you're going to have all the money in the world. Yes. You got a young nucleus. You got draft picks out the yin-yang. And unlike OKC, even though I made that comparison, unlike OKC, Brooklyn's a destination, bruh. If I'm a free agent, I know the Thunder are good. I'm not trying to go to Oklahoma City, dog. If I can look at Brooklyn with a young nucleus and I can see the vision, and you got money? Yeah. I'll go to Brooklyn. Thanks. I think they're in good shape for a rebuild. Does that make sense? Is that fair, Ountae?
That's fair. There's a lot to unpack there. Once again, you always give me a ton to unpack. I'm going to start off with Cam Thomas. I just think he's a great player to be had for a rebuild as well. I think him, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton are great bones, right? to say, hey, free agent, you want to come play for New York, right?
Yes.
We have money, like you said. You should come play with these young guys who are hungry and scrappy and can do some good things. You've already seen it before. And they're going to get a lot of opportunities to show it off, right?
That's right.
Where you lost me is Ben Simmons. You can get something for Ben Simmons?
You don't think so?
They're literally going to have to pay the rest of his contract at the rest of the end of the season to be able to trade him to somebody else.
If he plays well, you don't think any team will show interest in that?
What did you just say?
Well,
What if?
I did disclaimer it. You got to be fair. I said I don't believe this will happen, but if Ben Simmons plays well,
right,
you can trade him and get something.
If
yes. Well, let's get into that.
Okay, so talk to me. Do you think that's a possibility this year?
Yeah, of course it's a possibility.
Because we've seen the videos, and I'm tired of the videos.
Yeah, the videos.
I'm over it. I'm over the Ben Simmons jump shot videos coming in every summer.
No, I'm not buying
tired
that.
of his teammates saying he looks good and he looks healthy and he looks happy. You know, are we actually going to get that this season, Travis?
Listen, you said, is it possible? Yes, it is.
Yeah, no, I believe it's possible.
Yes, it is. It is.
I believe it's possible.
No one ever questioned his talent, ever.
I think it is possible,
yes.
100%. I've seen it before, so
yes.
I know he can do it again.
Yes.
I know he still has the athleticism and all that other stuff, is whether he can be healthy and whether mentally he can get his mind together to put together a full season.
Yeah.
That's the question. It almost looks like he has the yips ever since he forgot to shoot that layup against Trae Young in the Eastern Conference Finals or whatever it was, or the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, you know? So ever since then, it looked like he forgot how to play basketball. So I'm asking you.
No.
Do you think it's possible?
It is possible, but I would not bet on it, which is why I said that, right? Like I was simply stating if he gives you something, you could try to move him to get something back. I mean, likely, no, I wouldn't bet on it. I'm done betting on Ben Simmons. No one's ever questioned his talent, ever.
No.
Or his God-given abilities, his size, what he can do with the basketball. If the shot has improved and he wants to play basketball. My issue with Ben Simmons has always been, and I don't even know if this is fair. Again, this is from the outside looking in. And no one will ever gloss over or belittle, you know, the issues he has had with mental health. We all respect that. We all get that. We're all human beings here.
100%.
Let's set that baseline here, right? With that being said, I have wondered at several points in Ben Simmons' career so far, does he love basketball?
Right.
Or does he love what basketball provides? That's been my question. I have not seen from him the fire to come back and play, the willingness to play hurt.
Yes.
Every pro athlete, and Tay, you balled at Division I, and you told me the same thing. Every pro athlete I've ever covered and Division I athlete I have ever covered in my long career has always told me during the season, you are never 100%.
No.
Ever.
No.
All of us play with something.
Right.
I have not seen that from Ben Simmons. I can't count on that. I guess my overarching bigger point was, regardless of him, if you get nothing from him, what's the difference?
Well,
okay?
No.
I'm saying they have enough in the cupboard in terms of young, talented players.
Yes.
Draft picks, you know, from the big three not working out and moving all those players and Harden and all that. And also money once he's off the books.
Yes.
They're still fine.
Yes.
I was simply saying, if he can give you something, it not only helps you win games, but it also kind of rises his stock.
It does.
And I think you could look to move him. You're not going to get, listen, I'm not saying you're getting the first pick in the draft for Ben Simmons.
I
everyone
understand.
relax.
I understand.
Here. But you could get something if he gives you
they're gonna have
something.
to pay. They're gonna have to pay that contract because 40
they know
is crazy.
They got to know that. No one's doing that. They have to know that. That's why I said when he comes off the books, they'll be in good shape.
Yeah. Here's my thing. I understand what you're saying, and the reason I'm getting so frustrated and and just upset about this situation is because I love players like Ben Simmons when he's at his peak.
Yes.
One of my favorite players growing up, and I've said it a million times on this show before, is I love Rajon Rondo in his game. So I have no issue with you not being able to shoot the three and all this other stuff. I love players who can play, make, and defend. But are you going to be able to give us that? Because if he can give you that, when you have guys like Cam Thomas, when you have guys like Cam Johnson, man, this could be a really special team. You know what I mean? Like as far as young, bad teams, it could be a team that we could be excited about. Maybe you bring them back next year on an $8 million deal instead of a $40 million deal, right? And have a veteran like that who's now better and on a prove it deal and hungry and all this other stuff. He can come in. I even love the guys like they have with Jalen Wilson. I think he had a fantastic summer league. He's a really good guy. I think they have a lot of other veteran guys like Bogdanovich on this team who can help them stretch the floor. I think they have guys like Shake Milton, who's looking for another opportunity to show that he's a capable NBA player after leaving the 76ers a couple years, and being with that team and wanting a new opportunity. So I really like this young Nets team. I just think that $40 million from Ben Simmons is the reason why they suck right now, to be honest, because he hasn't been able to give them anything. So I'm scared about this. You said you wouldn't bet on it. I want to know if you would bet on this, because you said you wouldn't bet on Ben Simmons.
Hell no.
Being the guy that we hope that he used to be. Would you bet on this? Cam Thomas averaging 30 points a game this season.
No, and I like him. 30's a little aggressive.
Okay.
I'll tell you
23 last year.
Yeah.
30, and for a lot of that year, he had Mikal. So another score.
That matters. I mean, without him, like, you don't think those defenses are keying in on you?
Right.
Let's see how it looks now that they're coming after you, right? I tell you what, I want no parts of betting this team at all. I'm sorry. Like, look, what they win 32 games last season? I'm shaving 10. I bet you they'll win 22, 25 games.
Wow.
I think they're going to be bad. I think those young players, their numbers will be fine. They'll be exciting. The future, I guess if you can feel good about being terrible, those fans will feel that. Like, they'll have young talent doing enough where you see the vision for the future. We're going to be okay. We got to build around these guys. But this season's going to suck. I'm sorry. That's how I think.
I agree. It's one of those things where I'm like, hey, show me something, right?
Yeah.
Show me something, Killian Hayes. Show me something, Zaire Williams. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Show me something, Trenton Wofford. Show me something, Day'Ron Sharpe. I want to see if one of these guys can break out. Obviously, they have Dennis Schroeder as well. He's a good NBA player. But it's a lot of guys who are on some prove-it opportunities. Even Dorian Finney-Smith wanted to get out. You could probably package him in a deal. I don't think he wants to be there from what I've heard or from what I've seen, allegedly. You know what I mean? So I won't talk too much about him. But for the rest of the guys, it's a prove-it opportunity. So I just want to see that.
Amen, brother. All right, before we get out of here, I want to say this. I'm upset that the Sun lost in the WNBA playoffs because, quite frankly, I thought they were the best matchup against the Liberty. You and I have talked all season long about those matchups between the Sun and the Liberty. Those were great games. They were close games. They were down to the wire. The Sun didn't win the majority of them, right? But they did get them sometimes, and they were always great competitive games. And I just thought, if you can get to the finals, play the Liberty, that's a tough matchup. The Sun have a chance to get it done. I now believe the Liberty are winning this championship. No problem. No disrespect to the Lynx. I just think the Liberty are a cut above them. I thought the Sun was a better matchup. To that, you say what on our way out?
Be fair to us. We have not seen game one. As of this recording, we have not seen game one. I think Nafisa Collier is going to have a fantastic series against the Liberty, against the New York Liberty. The Minnesota Lynx just don't have enough, in my opinion.
Same.
Firepower. I've been saying it, all year. I think the Liberty are just the best team all around in the WNBA. I was hopeful, like yourself, that the Sun would get it done, but they couldn't. And now I'm all in on the Liberty. If I had to bet, if I was a betting man, that's where I'd be throwing my dollars.
I am a betting man. And I have. For Travis Thomas and Ountae Campbell, that's a wrap here on Hold My Banner. Till next time, when we ask you to hold it again. Peace.
Deuces.